Hey, what's going on, everyone? Welcome to another episode of the Digital Jungle. I'm doing actually my third interview, and this is Dustin Walker. Dustin and I met about, what would you say, about 2 or 3 weeks ago, or a month?
Probably a month and a half, yeah.
Yeah, so Dustin has a very unique business and very unique skill set that I think could help a lot of you. And what he does is he actually helps to pretty much streamline and automate the whole sales process for hiring, being able to interview, being able to retain people. And his story is very interesting, how he ended up here, which I want to get into in a second. And then also just some tips I think that could help a lot of you just in terms of hiring the right people, saving a lot of time, making sure that you have a really good team around you to build your business. So whether you're starting out your business or whether you already have a business and you're looking to hit that next level and just hire more people and then also just retain the right people and make sure you have a really good team. Dustin's definitely a good person to talk to. So thank you so much for being on, Dustin.
Thanks for having me.
Awesome. So yeah, kind of just diving right into your story. So how did you kind of get into this? Or I know you had a bunch of interesting experiences, kind of getting into this. Can you go a little bit more into that and kind of explain how you, just your story?
Yeah, and I mean, as far as hiring and things like that go, I've always been in recruiting, onboarding type positions within my career, whether it's been in the custom motorcycle industry where I lived for a while, or just the automotive industry. And then we as life went on and as 2020 came about, right, we sort of decided that the digital area was definitely someplace I needed to try to live in. So, I mean, I started working with a lot of folks doing community solar and solar sales and things like that. And then we started doing a lot of work for them just to bring people on and keep them on. And so through their system, we automated a lot of the beginning processes and moved a lot of that forward to where the manager of any of those fields didn't have to put any of that time into finding the right person. All they had to do was interview and decide whether they wanted them to work for them or not, and then keep them after that, right? So really, keeping somebody was the biggest part of the whole process after that. But that's all training, and that's all stuff that's pretty easy to get through. I mean, then as far as an interesting story, I guess, right? Like it doesn't really strike me as interesting, but for a lot of folks, I mean, for a guy that started in the body shop in the body man world, moved his way all the way over to the solar world, and then finally into the digital marketing, digital recruiting world. There's a bit of a left turn at the traffic lights every now and again, to where you're working for somebody, and then you decide that you can probably do it better on your own, and then you just kind of start going and doing it on your own.
Wow. So going off of that, so what would you say kind of switched your mentality to like, hey, this is something that can not only help with this business that I'm working with in solar and everything you were working on, and then you could kind of just be able to help more people with this whole hiring aspect and just the processes and the systems.
Just take a look at the recruiting industry as a whole, right? I mean, as a recruiter today, and recruiter is a strong term for what I do, right? Like we help people hire people. That's about all we really do. We're not tracking down specific individuals unless you wanted us to, right? But at that point, then you're a recruiter. But we took a look at that. We took a look at that industry as a whole, and they were doing it completely different from how we were doing it. I mean, you have individuals that are trying to track down, spending a lot of their time sort of chatting people up and getting low results, but for a high ticket price. And that's not something that was really making sense to us, especially because the high ticket price was a part of the commission and part of that person's salary. So, I mean, any recruiter that brought on somebody that was, making $100,000 or more, asking for 30% of that salary,
Wow.
it's costing an employer money. Yeah. So, I mean, I think, Alex, you even saw some predatory behavior through recruiters and
Yep.
things like that. And it's because of the structure of the business, right? The structure of the industry. You'll get those predators out there that just want to go hunt and grab anybody that they can and just send them wherever they can, whether they're a good fit or not, right? And it just doesn't work. So we took our understanding of that and felt like we could apply it to the bottom up, right? So anywhere from a top level executive all the way down to entry level people for an hourly employee or for an assistant job or for a virtual assistant, especially. We were just able to help people onboard more people, cast their net as wide as they can, and then get the right people on board.
Yeah, that's amazing. And it's I don't know if I can kind of relate when in saying this to a lot of people starting out, but for me, it definitely is a daunting task to just as someone who never had experience, not just managing people, but being able to hire the right people, being able to qualify those people, ask the right questions, and then also just have a system behind it to just get a whole pool of qualified candidates. Because it's insane to me how much time it takes. And and even just costly, not just for hiring, but like, heaven forbid you hire the wrong person. Maybe they end up being dishonest, or maybe they, are not fully qualified for the job, to kind of go through that process again, rehire, retrain. And if you don't even have the training, it's just, there's a lot to it. And me being from, used to be from the corporate world, from tech, I was always going through the process, but I never actually realized how many steps are involved with that. So that's amazing that you're able to kind of condense that and streamline it for a lot of people. Because, I know a lot of people, including myself, where it's like you're starting to get into this, and it's a lot more than you think it is. So, so what would you say? So, like, if someone is trying to, let's say, hire for the first time, they're really not sure, how to qualify the right people. They're not really sure how to put themselves out there in the right way, and maybe not even know how to create a job description. Like, what would you recommend in maybe like the first step or two to, just be in the right direction and find, one or two good people?
Yeah, right. Best way to find just a couple of good folks. I mean, if you look at your industry, who are you looking for, right? And it really is just like there's 4 or 5 levels of people, right? Do I need an entry level person? Am I looking for hourly? And then how am I going to pay that person? But then beyond that, like, am I looking for somebody who is willing to invest a little bit more time into the company, or am I looking for a CEO, right, or C-suite person? Now, your first time hiring somebody, you're probably looking for an assistant or something like that would be my guess. And truly, or maybe you just got a job as a hiring manager, so you really want to take a look at your industry, understand what you're going to be asking that person to do, and anything that you're going to ask that person to do, that's what you want to fill out for your job description, right? So, I mean, it's as simple as putting together job duties. However, I mean, if it's your first time, go to Indeed, go to ZipRecruiter. They have people that'll help you free of charge write a job description if you really want to, right? I mean, if they have Indeed's got a new beta out actually that's called the Digital Recruiter, where they'll help you put together a good solid job ad that'll get the right person in the door if you want to, and they do it all free of charge, right? That's not something that they're going to charge you for until you decide that you want to sponsor your ad or start pulling resumes or something like that. But that's really more for the seasoned pro, somebody who's spent some time on that platform and understands that if I know I'll get the right person if I sponsor this ad, or I know I'll get the right person if I pull this resume with these qualifications. I mean, pull the wrong person with who looks qualified is going to cost you 3 times the amount that it's going to cost you to train the right person with no qualifications at all. So, I mean, it's really important that you're just driving home the quality of person that you want versus the qualification that you want. As a recruiter or as a hiring manager, as I've been in the past, it's never been super important to me the qualifications of the individual, as the individual is qualified, right? You really want to make sure that that's the right person for the job. And the qualifications and credentials don't always fit that, right? Somebody could have an MBA and be absolutely useless compared to the person who just went to community college and maybe doesn't have the degree structure that person does. Ben Horowitz did that exact thing. He hired the wrong person for the right sales job and tripled his revenue because of it.
Wow.
Just because he focused on strengths instead of weaknesses.
I think that's so important, that point you're making. And maybe not just looking at what's on paper, but hey, who is it, the quality of the person that I'm talking to? What is their strengths, and how do you attract that? Because I've heard so many stories of like, hey, like this person never worked in sales, but they just crush it. Like they just start just closing deals like nonstop. It's insane. Like I mean, would you have any particular advice about being able to separate, someone who on paper they look really good, but maybe they're not as qualified, or someone who could be a very good candidate, but on paper maybe they don't have that type of experience? Or yeah, would you have any recommendations?
Yeah, I mean, so you really first thing on a job posting, right? What do you see, right? You see that I need to have a bachelor's degree and I need to have a master's degree, and those are required, which
Yep.
is the worst thing that anybody can do, right? Because
Yeah.
you're gonna scare away every possibility that you ever had, and finding a good qualified person who maybe doesn't have the master's degree or doesn't have the bachelor's degree or something like that, but can learn on the fly like you need them to because you're running a business. So I mean, having those as a preference, but you'll always train the right person. That's a good way to get people in the door. But then whatever qualifications that you have for credentials, you need to match that with personal qualifications. So, I mean, if you have, and it's just put it to numbers right away, right? The best and easiest thing you can do is just put it to numbers and say, if I have three qualifications for credentials, then I need 3 qualifications for personality too, right? Generally, every qualification that we put out for credential, we put out 2 qualifications for personality. So you don't see much per credential on our end, but we're hiring for sales too, right? So we're looking for all personality. That's all we want, is a good personality. I mean, but truly, for any position, we really want to make sure that you get a solid person, not a solid degree.
Gotcha. Another, I think that's so. Oh my gosh, that's so helpful. I'm actually going to start applying these things after we finish this interview. So, for the personality stuff, I guess one thing I've always wondered is, how do you know that this is someone that's really being authentic to themselves when they answer their questions, how they act, or if it's just something that they're kind of maybe saying certain things for an interview, almost like for like a test or something, in school, or because maybe how do you know that this is really them, that you're, I don't know if that's kind of a good way to
Yeah, no, you're
explain
absolutely
that.
right. So,
Yeah.
yeah, and you're going to ask qualifying questions, right? But you're going to try and do that before the interview stage, of course, right? You want to give them something that they need to fill out. And what you're looking for there is life stories. You don't want someone who's nailed it every single time at a job, right? Or done, I worked at this place and this is what I did. I worked at that place and I tripled sales or whatever. You want someone who's overcome something in their life, and they're proud to talk about that, because that person's proud of themselves. And that's what you want. So when you're doing qualifying questions, you want to hear life stories. You don't want to hear work stories.
Wow. And yeah, I think it's easy to just assume like, hey, if I'm going on an interview, they just want to see that I'm just, I'm at the top of my game, every single experience. But yeah, if you're not proud of yourself, I mean, it's like, hey, how are you gonna be on the job and on the fly just solve problems and be a good be able to be employed in the best way. Perfect. So and then also in terms of pulling candidates, do you just recommend just being on all these different platforms, Indeed and ZipRecruiter, starting at one at a time? What would you recommend, just setting all that up? Or
Super depends on what you're hiring for, right? At the lower end, I would absolutely stick to platforms like Indeed for hourly positions and things like that. When you're looking for better salespeople and more targeted, you definitely want to start looking at LinkedIn as your marketing platform for that. Whether you're putting jobs on, or actually, I don't know if they know about your tool, Alex, but I mean, if you're using that tool as well, that's a very highly targeted tool that helps find the exact person that you want, right? You're always and your show rate's going to be a lot better on that too, right? Where if you're putting out an ad on Indeed, right, just a salesperson, right, or an appointment setter for solar, because we work in the solar industry a lot. So for somebody who is applying for an appointment setter job, we expect them to show up 50% of the time off of Indeed. While when we market on LinkedIn for a prospect, we expect that person to show up 85% of the time, right? So it's just a better, I hate to say better quality person, right? But it's a more targeted person. That person wants the job a little bit more because they have the experience, they have the skill set, and they're probably a little bit more interested.
I see. And I've even seen different, back when I was applying, I think I did see they have different, sometimes they'll even filter people out if they had certain experiences, or they'll have you fill out information, which may or may not be accurate if they're filling it out. I don't know what your experience has been with that, but they'll sometimes ask like, hey, how many years of sales experience do you have, or something like that. I mean, do you recommend doing that, or?
I do. I do recommend doing it. It's a free tool, so use your free tools, right? And you're going to filter down. If you're just looking to cast your net as wide as possible, get rid of them, right? And just bring in as many interviews as you can, and find the right person, because you're going to find the right person. And every 40 people, you find 5 great people. But if you're looking, if you only want to run interviews for a week and you want to interview 5 people and find one great person, then you really want to filter that down as much as you can. And with Indeed, and I tout Indeed pretty heavily. They're pretty great. They're bar none one of the best platforms out there for hiring, for recruiting, for whatever you're doing. I don't hate ZipRecruiter. I don't like to hate on them. They're just there. They have their own niche that they can operate in, right? And sales is one of them, but it's more of an insurance game than anything. So I tout Indeed pretty heavily, and they have a lot of wonderful free tools for filtering out people that, frankly, probably don't want the job, right? And once they get to those questions, they'll either stop or they'll answer them in a way that makes you not want to interview them.
Yeah, ZipRecruiter, I think, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think ZipRecruiter, they just kind of, you can just submit your resume to like 50 people, at a time. It's just very easy to submit your stuff. Because I remember, I think it was after one of my tech jobs. It was like I was just submitting my resume to everyone, just shotgunning it, And then yeah, Indeed, sometimes you'd have to go through like a process. You'd have to answer certain questions, and they were like, some of them were open ended, so you'd really have to spend time. And it's like, hey, is this person? And that's, I'm sure, from a recruiting standpoint, it's like, hey, this is someone who's actually qualified versus someone who's, sometimes it would be too many questions and I would just give up, So I was like, I don't care about this job enough to all these questions, which it works, So what would you say, because this is something I struggle with, and I'm sure other people have this question as well. What would you say is maybe a good way of knowing that, hey, this person that I'm talking to, let's say you do, 10 or 20 interviews, however many it is, and I'm talking to this person, they seem like a rock star, they seem like someone I want to have on my team, but it's like almost maybe like a FOMO thing where like, hey, what if I interview 5 more and there's someone better? Like, when do you know to kind of stop that process? I don't know if there's like a clear answer on that, but I wasn't sure, like, hey, when do you know, like, hey, this is the person, I'm good, I can stop the interviews? Or
yeah, that's a shot from the gut usually, right?
Yeah.
But when you feel it, you feel it. You're absolutely correct. Especially, that's why interviews are important. They're so important because, like, the greatest person on paper can be the worst interviewer in the world. But at the same time, the worst interviewer in the world be the best employee you ever had. So it's sort of it's a catch-22 at the same time. But if that person looks, sounds, and tastes like a rock star, then offer them a job. Stop the interview process, right? Just do it. And offer them a job right away. Don't say, we'll get back to you. Even if you can't make the decision and that person's going to make it and do it, if you're the one doing the interviewing, you're the one doing the hiring. So it doesn't matter if you have to talk to somebody about it or not, you're going to be the one making the decision in the long run. So just offer them a job. And honestly, that's a bit of a gut check for them too, right? And offer them the job, and offer them the job starting tomorrow, right? And they'll clearly, if they're any good, they'll have to give 2 weeks notice somewhere else, right? Or at least some sort of notice somewhere else. But just let them know that you're that interested, and they'll be there for you.
Yeah, I like that a lot. Just being transparent on both sides. Like, hey, because I think that happens a lot. Like, at least from what I've seen, it's like, hey, we'll get back. It's always, hey, we'll get back to you. And then sometimes it's, tomorrow. Sometimes it's, I remember, I think I had one, I want to say 2 years after my interview. They're like, oh, we decided to not move forward. I'm like, where have you been? Like, I'm literally like, I graduated college and, I already have a full-time job. Like, I'm already good. But yeah, I like that transparency, because that, even whether it's good or it's bad news, it's like, hey, that respect is still there, that relationship is still there, and you're not burning any bridges, either way. So I like what you're saying about that. That does make a lot of sense. Gotcha. So yeah, and then what would you also say to, just in terms of just keeping, so once you find these rock star, or even if it's one person that you're hiring, like, how do you keep people like that? Like, how do you retain people? How do you keep them motivated? Yeah, do you have any tips on that?
Training, training, training. Most important three words of any hiring manager's life, right there. I mean, even if they don't need it, train them, send them, touch them with training all the time. If you have to automate the process, automate the process. I mean, with our sales professionals, what we do is when we bring them on, we require that anybody who uses us as a hiring service, we require that their first week they offer 7 days of training. And whether it's in-person training, or if it's automated touch, right? So like, we have a system set up to where every single day that new recruit gets touched with some sort of training, whether it's a training deck, training video, audio pitches, whatever it is. And then after that, we provide the next 12 weeks of training videos for them. So we put together, and I'm just telling you what we do to retain people through the first year, because that's the most crucial part. Just like any child is, just like any new recruit is, you want to nurture them through that first year and make sure that they're excited to work for you that entire time. So always be training. Have to be training. It cannot be an afterthought. If it's an afterthought, your employee's an afterthought, then they're going to feel like an afterthought, and they're going to go find somebody else who thinks about them first, right? So you got to train all the time, right? And then, I mean, you got to motivate them too. I mean, and we live in the sales world, right? So we make sure that people are motivated with mindset. We offer mindset motivations and things like that. So we want to make sure that everyone's getting always like a 1 to 5 minute video of just like, you can do it, man. Like that's what's important to a salesperson. It might not be important to an hourly worker who has to provide a service to somebody, but training is going to be important to that person. Whether it's just feedback once a week, that's fine. Or if it's an actual improvement style training that you're always either sending them to a class, or just giving them feedback once a week, or helping them with new skills that they want to learn. So anybody who grows within a business, that's a good intrinsic reward to give somebody, to give them the opportunity to rise up when the opportunity comes.
Yeah, that training is something, I think that's, even if it's like, hey, they're starting at the bottom level, it's like that training, it just shows that you care, I think, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, like just kind of just having that and structure. And I mean, would you recommend any type of training? Like, do you think in person, video? Obviously right now we're in the middle of, what's going on in the world, but
right?
yeah, so I mean, I guess you're kind of limited to certain things, but I mean, does it depend on the person to do certain types of training, or do you have it kind of the same training for each person, or different training for different
like different
skills?
training for different skills, for sure. Different training for different dealers in that sense, or different employers, right? So I mean, it all depends on what you're doing, but then it depends on who's teaching you too, right? Some employers, they want to set it and forget it. They don't care. So, but we need to put out the image that they do care, so we help them, right? But then beyond that, like, if you are an employer that actually does care, show you care, invest that time into your employees, because that's all it is time. It's the cheapest thing you can give somebody is knowledge, okay? Besides the title. So, I mean, it really is the best thing that you can do for anybody.
Absolutely. One even mindset shift that I had was, it's like, hey, everyone on my team is really good at something, and it's like, if they reach the next level, it's almost like lifting this shirt. Like, everyone comes with you, because
Right?
it's like, hey, if my sales guy is just crushing it, if I give him some training and he just starts even, going from closing a couple deals to even, doubling that or tripling that, it's going to motivate the rest of the team. It's going to bring, more profits in. It's going to just be a huge win-win, even for him. If eventually, it doesn't work out, maybe he finds a better opportunity, he still has that skills and he still has that knowledge. And it's just, we just have such a good relationship within the team. And it's just like that intrinsic thing that you're talking about. Absolutely.
people get way more out of that than monetary value any day of the week. Money's important, makes the world go around. It's how you put food on the table, how you pay your bills. But you got to make that person feel like they're needed, because you do need them. I mean, business doesn't happen without employees.
Yeah, and what would you also recommend in terms of setting goals for each? Do you recommend setting goals for each individual person, for the whole team, or kind of setting the vision, or just kind of keeping everyone on track and helping them progress?
As a manager, yeah, set goals for your team individually, right? So you need to make sure, because everyone's different. You have a North Star that the whole team wants to hit, of course. But then beyond that, everyone's got their own little. Everyone has their own thing that they can add to that team, and you want them to be able to improve on the other things, right? So you want to set these individual goals, and I did it as a. So this is an odd thing. I worked as a quality supervisor at a call center for a long time. Actually, it was not long, but a year and a half. It felt like a long time ago. But we had a team of 62 people, right? And on that team of 62 people, I spent 62 hours, because I brought everybody in for at least 1 hour and helped them improve on what they can improve on. They didn't know what quality was before I moved in there, but the thing that did, right, is it brought everybody together as a team, because they were all talking about what they could improve on, because they were in cubicles next to each other, so they were always talking. And what one person was improving on, another person was able to improve on as well, and then vice versa. So they got the reciprocal effect from everybody around them. And what that did is it actually drove up sales and drove up the quality of the phone calls that they were doing by about 300%. So, wow. I mean, it was, yeah. So that was a massive thing, but it was all based on individual goals set for individual people, with this North Star idea that we were going to increase sales.
Wow. So was that idea, that North Star idea, was that coming from your manager, I'm assuming, at the time? Or
no.
Or
I was selling energy in the deregulation market. They knew I had some quality experience, and they just said, "Here you go. This is a team. You do something with that."
Oh, wow.
Increased sales, of course, is always the North Star set by the manager. But I mean, please do something with this team. It's sort of what they said.
Wow. And then, that's good that you just ran with it, and then just that simple thing was able to get you guys. That's an insane improvement. So, it's I think that's a great point too, because it's like, hey, if one person is motivated and they're at a certain level, all it's gonna do is it's just gonna bring everyone else. And then it was amazing that you were able to create kind of a collaborative environment, because I think there are companies that silo people, and they're kind of just in their own thing, and there's no room for that cross collaboration. But you look at companies like Google, who just have all these different, they encourage side projects, they encourage cross collaboration, and being able to just have different freedom, among their stuff. So I think that's a great environment to create. And almost the other way I was looking at it too is like, if everyone is good at one thing, it's like, they can help each other if someone else wants to explore another role, or vice versa. And that's just going to make people more fulfilled, more happy, and more invested mentally, maybe. I don't know.
You're absolutely correct. I mean, they're part of a team, they're part of a group, they're part of a tribe. And that's the biggest thing that most people are unaware of, but they like being a part of a tribe.
Absolutely. So kind of on the flip side, I know I'm asking a ton of questions, but it's because I'm genuinely curious, and these are things that are my own questions, and even things that I've heard. Like, so are there maybe like one or two reasons, just so that people listening to this, so that they can avoid this with, the people that they do have on their team? Are there maybe one or two main reasons that people usually leave a company that you've heard maybe over time, or
People don't quit companies. People quit people 100% of the time, right? Anytime anyone's ever leaving a company, generally they're leaving because there's plenty of animosity beforehand. But people quit people just because you're either not paying attention to them, or treating them badly, or not giving them what they want, right? And so there's two reasons people quit people, right? If they're not getting what they want, then maybe they don't know what they want, right? So they're quitting because they're finding an opportunity that maybe better suits them. The only time that you're ever going to see somebody quit a company is when you nurture them beyond you. Right. So if you're training that person and you train them, I mean, was it Richard Branson? Right. Train your people to be. Train your people to be better than what you need them to be, or something like that, right? And if as a manager or as a trainer or anything like that, if your entire team is better than you, then you're doing your job right. And that's what you need to be able to do. And then that team, you will eventually get people that grow out of that role. And if there's not a spot within that company for the next step up, they're going to find another company because they're not going to be fulfilled anymore. And that's not your fault. That means you did them a solid and you were a stepping stone for them. But they quit. That's the only time they're ever going to quit a company. Beyond that, either not paying attention to them or you're not giving them what they need.
So in terms of getting what they need, I think that's perfect advice, by the way. In terms of giving them what they need, are there any questions that you ask them, maybe in the beginning or during the process of them getting trained or just being on board, to make sure that, hey, they're getting exactly what it is that they want, what they need?
Yeah, right. You want to take care of that before you onboard them. You always want to, if they have a job and they're interviewing with you, you want to know why, right? And you're going to be able to gauge a person pretty quickly off of the answer that you get of why are you leaving this job, right? And if it's they're not doing what I need them to do, or they're not recognizing me for my potential or anything like that, that's a person that you probably don't want to hire, because they're going to be, and I hate to say that about anyone, right? But you don't want to hire that person because they're probably going to be pretty dramatic about every single thing, and they're not going to get you what you want, whether they're credentialed or not, just because they expect the world, but they don't expect to do a whole lot for it. Now, a person that is going to answer that question with, well, you know what, I'm just looking for new opportunities. The company I'm working for is great. They know that I'm looking for another job right now, and they respect that and they support it. I mean, that's the only person in my eyes that I want to bring from another company, especially because I want to be able to call that company and verify that information. Now, you got to hire people, right? You absolutely have to hire people, but if they have a job, you want to make sure you know a good reason why they have a good reason why they're leaving the company already. And hopefully it's to search for a new opportunity. If it's for any sort of negative reason at all, I'd stay away from that person.
It's almost like relationships, right? It's like, hey, like, if they're doing it to them, like what happens, like, if they come over to me or something. So yeah, it's good to, it makes sense to catch that early, just making sure that they're coming to you for the right reasons. Also, just kind of a side note too, I mean, what do you think allowed you to get to this point of being successful at hiring, being able to understand the process, being able to be where you are, and even have a SaaS product, which I don't think I even mentioned, but you have your own, product from front to back in terms of the whole process, streamlining it, making it a lot better, and just helping a lot of people that way. But yeah, what allowed you to just really understand this whole thing?
Yeah, well, I mean, I forget his name, but it's a chef down in Mexico. I think his name is Enrique. But he talks about tacos, right? And it's just like, you find a good taco, you got to eat a lot of tacos. It's simple as that.
I've been eating a lot of tacos down in Mexico, I'll tell you that, for
sure. So, I mean, and the meaning behind that, of course, is just you got to do a lot of it, and it takes time. You got to put the time in. You got to be there. So, what makes you successful is going through the bad. I mean, every failure in hiring the wrong person and feeling bad about that and having to take care of that issue, right? That's the biggest thing about being a hiring manager or being a recruiter or something like that. But honestly, as a recruiter, you're really not responsible for it. The hiring manager is the one responsible for it. But having to deal with that bad employee, we're going to put that in quotes because there should be no bad employees, right? But having to deal with that bad apple is not a fun thing to do, especially after 90 days, right? So it's really important to get through that, though, and understand that you don't want to make that mistake again. But to be successful, right, it tells you that, okay, when I first hire that person on, I really need to be involved in the process. I can't just let them be whoever they are. I need to be there 100% of the time in that first 5 to 90 days, so that way this mistake doesn't happen again and I can be more successful, right? So you learn from that mistake. So that's that. We'll take that mistake away from a few people by telling them that they just need to be involved in the first 90 days of the hire.
Wow. So I guess it's almost like same way that the employee's getting these training wheels. It's like you also want to be consistently always improving, always, if you do make a mistake in the hiring, like, hey, like what caused this? What is the root? Why did this happen? Gotcha. That makes a lot of sense. Wow, this is just jam packed full of good advice for hiring, and I think it's something that, especially like I said before, I think it's something that a lot of new entrepreneurs or even people that have been doing it for a while, I mean, there's always room for improvement. I mean, there's always, whether it's, hiring or interviewing or retaining and training and all that. I mean, there's so many parts to it. And it's amazing that you're doing what you're doing and helping people through this process. And then also out of curiosity, so for you, for your product and what you do in terms of helping people, what types of people, listening to this, if they have any questions or, what would you say, like, is the best way for them to reach you, or what kind of situation are they usually in when they come to you, just so that they have an idea?
Yeah, right. So the situation that people are in when they come to me is they're having trouble getting headcount, right? So they need lots of people, and that's sort of what we specialize in is getting lots of people. I mean, you were on a call earlier this week that sort of proves that out. So that our specialty, of course, is getting lots of people in the door, so that way they can fish out who they need to fish out. So in terms of getting hold of me, I mean, you can always go to my website, www.rev2pro.com. And then my email address is dustin@rev2pro.com as well. And people can email me directly if they have any questions or anything like that, if they'd like to explore some services with us, of course.
Let me just actually put that on the bottom here. What was the email again? So I can write it on here.
Dustin@rev2pro.com.
RED?
REV, Rev.
Oh, and then number 2?
Correct.
Got it. Perfect. So yeah, if you guys look right on the bottom, so that's his email. So if anyone here has any questions, please reach out to Dustin. He's very good at what he does. He's actually given me a lot of advice, and we're actually doing a couple projects together as well. But yeah, if anyone has any questions about hiring, even if you're just starting out, Dustin's definitely an amazing resource. I think I was actually, before I met you, I think I was actually posting in a lot of groups like, hey, who does hiring? Who does hiring? And like, no one does hiring. Like no one even, it's very rare to find someone in digital marketing that solves the problems that you solve. So it was kind of hard to find you, but I'm glad that I did.
I'm happy you did too.
Yeah, for sure. All right, perfect. Thank you so much for being on. And we'll be doing interviews like this every single week. If anyone wants to be on an interview, please just shoot me a DM or a PM. And then I'd be more than happy to set that up. We're just trying to help as many people as possible, share skills, share advice that can help any digital nomads, expats, and business owners. So thank you so much for being on, Dustin.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Awesome.